Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to this edition of Touring with Travis on this very blustery Sunday here on Bald Head Island. My name is Travis Gilbert. I'm the Educator and Collections Coordinator for the Old Baldy Foundation. And behind the camera here, we have our Executive Director, Chris Webb, and the rest of our staff members, just like you probably are, working remotely as we try to flatten this curve and do what we can to get on the other side of this pandemic so we can start doing tours live and in person and all of us can get back to things as normal. So we thought that on a Sunday we would bring you the Village Chapel, located right beside Old Baldy Lighthouse. Just a few hours ago on a typical Sunday there would be lots of folks in here for their service, but unfortunately, like so many other churches, they're just not able to hold services right now. So I pulled out some things from what we call our subject files, and this is a resource that you can access via Old Baldy's website from the comfort of your home. So we've been talking this week about collections in our archives, if you will. So many other pieces of our collections that we know are donated by a specific donor are what we call accessioned, meaning that the Old Baldy Foundation takes over ownership of those pieces in our archives, meaning that if there was a title, like when you buy a car or whatnot, we would take over the title of owning that object that helps tell the story of Bald Head Island. But let's say, in the office, I'm a great newspaper clipper. Something's mentioned about Bald Head Island in our local newspapers, I clip it out. Well, I'm not really a donor to the Old Baldy Foundation. And that subject file is full of objects just like that. Newspaper clippings, pamphlets, things that typically staff members at the Old Baldy Foundation are just collecting on our, daily routines, posters and flyers and newspaper clippings. And we bunch those together by subjects. So just as Old Baldy Lighthouse has a subject file, Chris Webb has a subject file, the Village Chapel of Bald Head Island has a subject file full of newspaper clippings and pamphlets that have been collected over the years by the Old Baldy Foundation. So why don't we come on over around here. I pulled out our subject file from the chapel, and a lot of these different pieces really help tell the story of how this beautiful chapel came to be. And after we kind of take a look at what was in the file, we'll take you around and show you some of my favorite things about this beautiful sanctuary.
Okay, well, we have 13 people
Nice.
Viewing.
Yeah.
So Christine Sachtelben, I hope I don't massacre that last name, is watching.
Hello, Christine.
Andrea Williams, listening from Bahama, North Carolina.
You have been a repeat offender. Remember, we looked up where Bahama, North Carolina was.
She says, love your live tours. You're doing great. Please keep doing them. And Stacy Paulson Kilberg, hi from Geneva, Illinois.
Nice.
Love seeing BHI on your tours.
Great. Well,
So anybody else have a comment?
yeah, please, shout out in the comments. Tell us where you're listening from on this Sunday afternoon. Give us a shout out. What's your connection to Bald Head Island? And we're working on coming up with new content for this week. I've seen comments about, hey, tell us about Colonel William Rhett. We live on his street here on Bald Head Island. I've heard some comments about the Generator Society. So give us a shout out in the comments. Let us know what you would like to see us bring you into this new week. And I'm going to be following along here on my phone to see what y'all have to say.
Here's Mackie. Hi, Mackie.
Hey, good afternoon, Mackie. So come on over and take a look. So, services on Bald Head Island began in the mid-'80s at this facility called the Bald Head Island Inn. It was really the first kind of inn or hotel style accommodations here on Bald Head Island, and it was located along South Beach near the modern day Bald Head Island Club. And some homeowners in the mid-'80s gathered at that inn and started having services, kind of informal services at that inn. And that served as a spark or a catalyst to this idea, well, why don't we build a sanctuary, a dedicated space for services for our community here on Bald Head Island? So the developer, George and Cynthia Mitchell, ended up donating a parcel of land next to Old Baldy Lighthouse, dedicated to the construction of this chapel you see today. So it got started, you can see here, the groundbreaking was in 1986. They actually met at Old Baldy Lighthouse for a sunrise Easter service, and we have the pamphlet here, or the program, for that groundbreaking ceremony. You can see John Messick, that name's going to come up in a few minutes. He provided some remarks. Kent Mitchell, who's the son of the developer, George and Cynthia Mitchell, provided some remarks. And after their church service over there, you can see they came over here and blessed the land that we are currently on. You can see that sign says future site of Bald Head Island Chapel from this State Port Pilot clipping. It says April 2nd, 1986. The State Port Pilot being the local newspaper over in Southport. You can see John Messick here. Again, that name's going to come up, bowing his head right in front of a depiction of this chapel. One of my favorite parts is during that sunrise Easter service in 1986, John Golden provided some music, and I've worked with John Golden through the Lower Cape Fear Historical Society. He's a great storyteller and a artist up in Wilmington. His wife is an artist too up there. So a little bit later in 1986, you see this newspaper clipping. That is Kent Mitchell, again, the son of the developer, George and Cynthia Mitchell, giving the deed to this parcel of land to Charlotte Sorrell. Charlotte ended up serving as the chairperson of the committee to create this chapel. And you can see they are standing right on this parcel here. You can see Old Baldy Lighthouse with one of our iconic golf carts right there behind them. So they ended up commissioning, Charlotte Sorrell ended up commissioning Clovis Heimseth. Clovis was an architect based out of Texas, and they very much communicated to him that this committee wanted to create a chapel that would blend into the historic architecture, or the historic aesthetic, you might call it, of Bald Head Island. And I've heard a lot of different terms to describe that type of architecture. The one I like the most is called, Carolina or coastal vernacular. Vernacular being kind of a flavor of a specific area. A vernacular, I think that's a great definition for it. A flavor that is unique to a specific community or a geographical area in the United States or across the world. So what is vernacular about coastal Carolina? Well, it was the buildings that the federal government constructed on barrier islands like Bald Head Island, either for the lighthouse service, these keepers' cottages that dotted our coastline, or the life-saving service stations. Earlier this week, we discussed a station out at Cape Fear. So they are getting inspiration from the architecture that was created at these stations and at these keepers' cottages. Things like high-peaked gabled roofs, things like cedar shake siding and cedar shake roofs. And we're going to see those elements here in the Village Chapel. If you're familiar with architecture or art, it kind of reminds me of the Gothic or Neo-Gothic. For me specifically, the architecture drives my eyes upward. Rather than reading the building horizontally, I read the building vertically. So the architecture, whether it be the windows, whether it be the roof line, it's pointing upwards. And I think that's perfect because we're in a sanctuary, and it's kind of like it's pointing your eyes upward towards God or the higher being up there, whatever your beliefs are. So I think it's pretty fitting. So you can see here some pictures of the contractors finishing up the building. This is from 1987, so it's about a year after the groundbreaking ceremonies. You see Charlotte here, the chairperson of the committee inside that unfinished chapel building. Again, April 22nd, 1987. And you can see that at that church service, that sunrise Easter service in 1987, they meet at Old Baldy Lighthouse to have one of their iconic sunrise services that still occur today. And then the group as a whole walked over to the chapel building that was still unfinished and dedicated this unfinished space. So let's take a look at the comments and see what folks might be saying here. I'm going to log in here. There's a little bit of lag. All right, so we have Debbie Ward, missing our chapel this morning. Thank you for doing this. We're really happy to be doing this, and you are probably very familiar with the blessing, and we're going to end today with that blessing for this chapel. It ties into what we spoke about yesterday, about this Highland Scottish heritage that permeates Bald Head Island. Stacy, I see Judy Richard, the best resident of BHI, is watching. Hi, Judy. That's been kind of an unexpected consequence of all these virtual tours. Folks that know one another from the island and are scattered all across the nation seem to be connecting in our comments, and that makes us feel really great that we're providing a forum for that. So, hi, Judy, and hi, Stacy. Thanks for joining in. Helen, yes, more Generator Society and photos if possible. Thank you. Well, not only am I going to show you photos next week, we're going to pull out some of those oral histories, and you're going to be able to hear stories from the Generator Society in their own words and in their own voice. So we're going to be really excited to bring that to you next week. So stay tuned, Helen. Cynthia, watching from Edenton, North Carolina. My husband and I got married in the Village Chapel of Bald Head Island, November 23rd, 2005. Cynthia, that is awesome. I hope Edenton is doing well. That's probably my favorite town in North Carolina. And I know you have a beautiful Episcopal church up there. Love our chapel, Patricia. Watching from home in Southport. I work there. Hey, Patty. I hope your office gets back to normal soon, and I'm looking forward to when we all get back to normal and I can see your beautiful smiling face on that 8 o'clock ferry in the mornings, because you are a pleasure to talk to when I'm sleepy in the mornings. Donna, we love the tour. We're from Long Island, New York. Donna, you be safe up there in Long Island. And of course, Mackie. Hey, Mackie, we're glad to have you there. So let's kind of go around and see some of the features of the Village Chapel. I think it's one of my favorite things about this chapel is when you go in most other sanctuaries, of course, you're going to have stained glass everywhere. But it was decided here in the Village Chapel to not have stained glass in all or a majority of the windows. They wanted to be able to look out onto this beautiful saltwater marsh. And you can see Middle Island and Bluff Island on the other side. That's all a sanctuary. It's a preserve owned and protected by the state of North Carolina. And it's really marrying development or amenities like this chapel with the natural world. And that's everything on Bald Head Island, trying to bring together human nature and nature itself. So that was a kind of a very important feature that committee wanted in the design of this chapel. Let's take a look at this beautiful stained glass window up there. That was placed shortly around 2004. And when they completed the chapel, it was empty. It was just a normal window. It was not stained glass. And Bynum Tudor, who is one of those Generator Society folks, if you aren't too terribly familiar with Bald Head Island history, these are the folks that lived here in the 1970s, before electricity was delivered to the island. So we call them the Generator Society because they were powering all their amenities off of gas-powered generators. Bynum Tudor was one of those folks, one of those original modern community members here on Bald Head Island. Well, he told everyone that we're gonna leave that empty, and specifically he told John Messick, who is a character that permeates several eras in Bald Head Island history, that John, if you die before I do, we're going to dedicate that empty window to you. Now, John Messick, he began as a marketing director, a real estate developer for Carolina Cape Fear Corporation, which purchased this island in the year 1971. Now, unfortunately, we'll go into detail about Carolina Cape Fear Corporation in a later broadcast. They eventually go bankrupt in the mid-1970s. And John Messick, as a former employee, served as a bridge between that bankrupt developer, the developers in between, and the current developer, Bald Head Island Limited, LLC. The Mitchell family that we were speaking about with George and Cynthia and their son Kent, who was giving Charlotte the deed to this land. So John served through 3 eras of developers and became one of the central figures for Bald Head Island, and arguably this island and its development's largest cheerleader. Well, he passed away in 2004, and because he was so instrumental in the creation of this sanctuary, they dedicated that stained glass window to him. It depicts a dove, which of course is a symbol of peace, specifically a symbol of the Holy Spirit. And you can see that there are 12 rays going around the dove, and that's representative of the 12 apostles in the Christian faith. And it receives its inspiration from a stained glass window that is in the Basilica at Rome, St. Peter's Basilica, by Bernini, a famous Christian architect and artist. Because when John Messick was touring that basilica, he says that he saw God, he saw the Holy Spirit looking at Bernini's window. And obviously they couldn't do something on the massive scale of Bernini in this smaller sanctuary. So the wife of the architect, Marian Heinze, she developed this stained glass window as inspiration from John Messick's experience looking at that Bernini window. So we have it up there as a constant reminder of everything that John Messick did for this community. So he's always kind of with us. So you can look out onto the sanctuary. It is in the cruciform form, which means it looks like a cross. So you have a cross section here and then a center aisle. So if you were to look from an aerial perspective, it looks just like a cross. You can see up there on the balcony that we have these fish scales. And behind there, we're going to go up there in a minute, another stained glass window, the only other stained glass window in this sanctuary, depicts 3 fish. And if you turn around here, all these medallions, you notice, they also have 3 fish, and below, more architectural details that have scales. Well, these medallions, if you donated at least $100 to that committee forming this chapel, you could get a medallion up here with your name depicting those fish. And the fish is a universal symbol for Christianity. And of course, the number 3 the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit permeates Christian culture. So that fish theme is going to permeate the little details in this chapel. So let's check in and see what's going on here on Facebook. Do a whole section on the Generator Society. Margaret from Lexington, Kentucky.
I know, Margaret.
Yeah. Been coming to BHI for 20 years. Well, okay, well, we have a whole bunch of Generator Society coming to you. So thanks for tuning in, Margaret. So let's go up here. We're going to follow...
Did you not catch Mary Beth?
Oh, I didn't catch
Mary Beth Brewer is watching.
Oh, I have a little
And
bit of
Christina, my
Nice.
favorite place on Bald Head Island. I love the unique picketing or gingerbread on the railings. It looks like seashells.
Okay, absolutely. Let's, I couldn't agree more. So, let's
Oh, fish scale, she said. Learn
Yeah.
something new.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm in the business of going along, but yeah, to me it's fish scales, and the architect is taking a look. It's kind of again that Christian symbolism, just like the window with the dove and the number 12. The fish represented Christianity, and the number 3. So we're gonna go upstairs into the balcony. And when I was pulling out those newspaper clippings, the architect, Clovis, he was saying that they wanted to put a balcony in here because, and I couldn't agree more, thinking of myself as a child, children always go to the balcony in churches. And they thought if they put a balcony here, it would attract children to the church services. And I couldn't agree more because that's exactly what I did as a child. So you can see even the windows in this coastal vernacular, even they point upwards, upwards to God. Again, that coastal Carolina vernacular, or to me, kind of, if you're familiar with that term, Gothic, it's kind of Gothic, pointing upwards. I think Chris has the harder job here, trying to walk and camera or videotape at the same time.
It's the first time we've done stairs.
So you can see the only other stained glass window here in the chapel is original to the building. And it was dedicated to J.W., everybody knew him as Buck Timberlake. And he was another cheerleader, instrumental figure in the development of this island. And he, one of the things that he left behind for us is this idea that we're a Bald Head Island family. Anytime you read something about Buck, it's this term that he introduced folks to the Bald Head Island family, or his Bald Head Island family. And so in respect to always remembering his legacy, the tutors from the Generator Society dedicated this window to him. And you can again see the fish symbolism and the number 3 symbolism here in this stained glass window. And if you turn around and look into the sanctuary, you can kind of see that cruciform layout or design, again as a cross. On Sundays, it'd be packed in here in the summer. Right, so we're going to go back downstairs. I kind of wanted to pause a little bit. I'm sure y'all get tired of me listening, because I know a lot of you are missing this beautiful space, and you would much prefer to be here in person here on a typical Sunday. So thanks for joining in and listening to us, at least virtually.
Well, we have 26 viewers, so...
Yeah. And for folks who are listening into the future, we realize that so many of our audience members are going back onto these videos, whether they be on Facebook or IGTV, which I learned this week is Instagram TV. I'm learning all about technology right now, being forced, by the way.
And we have a YouTube channel.
And YouTube channel. I guess we're on YouTube now, so all kinds of different mediums to watch these videos in the future. So let's go back downstairs here. You're doing great, Chris. So as we were discussing yesterday, the Lower Cape Fear region, there were tens of thousands of Highland Scots that settled in this region in the 1770s. And there was a wave before that of a smaller group of Highland Scots to settle here. So not only on Bald Head Island, but throughout the Lower Cape Fear region, so much of our nomenclature and so much of our heritage originates with those Highland Scots. And here at the chapel, they have a blessing, a Gaelic blessing, that they speak about, or they say almost in every service, at least that I've come. And I thought that I could read that to you as Chris maybe looked around in the space. Perhaps you can join us wherever you're listening with this blessing, if you're familiar with it. And we'd end with that, just like if you were here, you would say this blessing in chapel.
Do you want to read a couple comments before we
Yeah,
end with the blessing?
That sounds good to me.
If you haven't commented, send in a comment so we know where you're listening from.
I gotta refresh my page here. We're learning that there are many great things about Bald Head Island. Cell service is not particularly one of them. We much prefer being in nature. You might have to read them.
I might have to read them?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Well, Mackie Miller, one of our volunteers who's listening from Carolina Beach. So, Chris, now that you've mastered the stairs so well, is the top of Old Baldy next? Ooh, I don't know. That's a lot of stairs, Mackie. Christina, she also said she learned something new about the fish scales. So pretty much that's it for now.
You got it. Well, I want to end with this blessing, but I'll let you know that be checking on our Facebook and Instagram. We're going to come up with all kinds of different topics into next week. At 10 a.m., we'll pull something out of our archives and do a quarantining collections. And in the afternoon at 2 o'clock, we will take you to a part of this island and talk to you about the history.
Oh, well, Anna Marie Marinelli, listening from Tufts Medical Center in Boston. Ooh, I hope you're not in the medical center, Anne Marie. Stacy Paulson Kilberg, love the view out the chapel windows. Gina, hey Gina, great job, Chris and Travis. Love hearing Chris's laugh. Oh, well, you know, it's just one of these things. You just have to laugh. You have to keep your sense of humor.
You've got it.
I think last night, Travis and our entertainment was FaceTiming with some of my relatives in Seattle, the real hot zone, Oakland, California. We talked to some folks in Wilmington.
Yep.
Talked to my brother from Boston this morning. So, yeah. It's crazy out there, and people are starting to leave the island as requested by the village, so it's getting very quiet here, and it's a cold and blustery day, so
Sure is.
after this, I think we're going to read books and
Take naps.
We're kind of tired.
Self-isolate.
We're kind of tired, but that's okay. That's all right. That's what we're here. We're here to expand our video library and extend to everybody a little bit of entertainment while it's educational at the same time.
All right, let's end with this blessing here. Deep peace of the running wave to you. Deep peace of the flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the shining stars to you. Deep peace of the gentle night to you, moon and stars pouring their healing light to you. Deep peace of Christ, the light of the world to you. Deep peace of Christ to you. Thanks for listening, everybody.